This module will go over the removal and installation of a Executive 4 PCBA in the TLS series library. The first thing you want to do is you want to go to the back of the library. You want to go ahead and switch the power to the off position and remove the power cord from the library. The exec board is located here underneath this panel. Now, depending on the model of your library, there are smaller TLSs where the exec board will be lower down or more centered in the library, and in larger sized model TLS libraries, you may have multiple exec boards. Now, once you've identified the exec board that needs to be replaced, you want to go ahead and identify the 6 screws that hold the panel in place. Now, you'll notice that there's additional screws, but if you look carefully, they're actually not holding the panel in place. They're actually underneath the panel. So you want to go ahead and remove the 6 screws that are holding the panel in place. When removing the final screw, you want to hold on, make sure that you use one hand or the back of one hand to kind of hold on to the board before removing the final screw. Now, depending on what options you have in the library, if you have this Ethernet connection, which is the Q-Link interface, you want to be careful when you lower the panel because there are going to be 2 cables that you need to disconnect from within the library. You want to disconnect the serial connection, and then you want to disconnect the power cord. Once those cables have been disconnected, you can go ahead and remove the panel. Once the panel has been removed, you'll see the exec board sitting underneath that panel. Now, if you look carefully, there's going to be multiple cables that are connected from the library to the exec board. So before removing the exec board, you do need to disconnect the cables. Now, what I always like to do to try to make things easier for me is I start from the upper left-hand corner, and I just, in a clockwise manner, just follow all around the exec board and disconnect all of the cables. Now, what you're going to have to pay attention to is some of these cables are also zip tied to the exec board. For example, this sensor cable is zip tied here in the corner. So before trying to remove the exec board, you want to get a pair of cutters and you want to go ahead and cut that zip tie. Once all the cables have been disconnected, you want to go ahead and remove the screws that hold the board in place. Now you'll notice that the board is still in place even though the outer screws have been removed. There are nuts that hold the exec board in place as well. Those nuts also will have to be removed. So the nuts can be found, one is here, 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 and the final one is underneath here. Once all the nuts have been removed, you can go ahead and pull the exec board out. You want to kind of pull it out a little bit to get it off its standoffs, and then you can kind of lower it to get the cables out of the way, and then pull it up and out of the library. To install a Exec 4 PCBA back into a TLS series library, the first thing you want to check is each of these stands should have a little standoff. Now the standoff is very important. The standoff is going to prevent the board from actually making contact with the frame underneath, which will obviously prevent any shorts from occurring on the board. So you want to make sure that all 4 of the screws have the standoffs in place. Now, if one is missing, it's highly likely that it's probably fallen down into the library, so you're probably going to have to search for it to try to figure out and try to find where it is. Now, once you've verified that the standoffs are in place, you want to go ahead and grab your board, and what I always found is you want to go ahead and sit it down, have it in place, and then kind of get the cables that you need on top of the exec board, and then go ahead and try to align the board to the 4 screws. So once you have the exec board back onto the screws, you want to go ahead and grab the 4 nuts. And once again, be careful not to drop any. Go ahead and reapply the nuts to the board. Once you've tightened all the nuts, then reapply the 4 screws on the outer frame of the board. Once the screws have been put back into place, you want to go ahead and reconnect all of the cables. Like we did when we removed the cables, I like starting from the upper left-hand corner here. And moving in a clockwise manner all the way around the edge of the exec board. Now please note that depending on the model of your library, you may have different cables that need to be connected. Some libraries, if you do not have a carousel unit, will not have this cable. For the TLS 4000 series library, you do not have this cable, but instead you have cables connected to here. On a TLS 4000 series library, you also do not have this drive bay cable down on this corner. So depending on the model of your library, the actual cables that are going to be connected will vary. So you just have to be careful that you make note when you removed any of these cables, which cables have actually been removed and which cables you have to reconnect after installing the board again. Now once the exec board has been put in place, you want to go ahead and reconnect the outer cover or the outer panel back onto the back of the library. Now, if you have just a bare cover, you can just go ahead and put the cover back on and reapply the 6 screws. If you have the Q-Link option or the Q-Link web interface option, you want to go ahead and reconnect the serial cable and the power cable back to the exec board. So connect the power cord there. Now the serial cable for the Q-Link, you'll notice here that there's multiple serial connectors here. For the Q-Link module, connects to the top serial connector. It's labeled serial B. Once the cables have been connected, you go ahead and position the panel back into place and then just reattach the 6 screws.